All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the workshop tonight. So, the topic for tonight is around stakeholder alignment, and we're going to explore how product managers and in product management, uh, creating alignment with stakeholders is one of the biggest bottlenecks that we have to deal with. So, I just want to say welcome to the session, and I'm Sam Greenwood. I'll be leading the session tonight, and I look forward to sharing and also learning more about you and the kinds of challenges and conflicts that you're experiencing in your PM work. So, yeah, let's jump right in. We're going to look at how stakeholder alignment and specifically conflicts in stakeholder alignment can be creating bottlenecks in trying to do our product work. And so I know that this kind of topic is the challenges in product management are so often talked about from a technical angle, whether it's data uh, or which features to prioritize, frameworks to use, even whether AI is gonna be how we're going to use it with our engineers or with our tools, et cetera. So I have found that there's a big area, a big gap missing in the conversation, and that's really around stakeholder alignment and interpersonal dynamics in the workplace, which is something that the product manager is incredibly uh, focused on and needs to be able to work with people and to ask the right questions and get information. So I'm just going to say hey to Stephanie. Welcome to the session. I'm just doing a little intro on the topic. So as I was saying, the conversations in the PM space I often find are more on the technical side of things. And it seems like there's a lot of room to bring these stakeholder dynamics more to the surface and especially create some space to explore where our conflicts are happening and what might be causing those. So that's really the focus of the session tonight. And the goal is to help navigate the conflicts so that we can create alignment with our stakeholders. And that way we can get back to doing the really exciting product work, which is, solving the complex problems and delivering value to the customers and working with data and all that. So that's really the goal with transforming these conflicts into alignment. So I'm gonna jump next into a little story. And this is about Bob. Bob is a senior product manager, and I worked with Bob with the situation that he was in. So I'll just give a little recap. And in part one, so Bob was at this company for a few years, and there was really he was working in the product and with the engineers, and they were kind of like a research and development arm of the organization because they were so disconnected from the sales and really the business strategy side of things. And so, and Bob knew that. Bob is a good PM, and he really wanted to get more perspectives from the sales team and from the business leaders and give them more direction with where they were taking the product. So there was like this disconnection. And then unfortunately, there was a restructuring that happened in the company, and they laid off a lot of people. But Bob survived, and Bob was still there. But at the same time, then the founder came into the PM and the dev space and started getting very involved, very hands-on. And this caused a lot of pushback. It caused a lot of triggers. And ultimately, Bob actually got into a very reactive state. And he was so concerned that the founder's approach wasn't going to work. And it was kind of Bob leading the charge of let's be product led, and then the founder, pushing back and wanting to be founder led. And so this was creating a conflict, and Bob got really caught up in that and got into this struggle. And the sad part is that this whole time Bob was missing the info, the insights that he really wanted from the business, the business side of the organization. And because he was in this reaction and this kind of ideological battle about being product led for good reason, but he was missing the opportunity of having the CEO in the room and asking really great questions and learning more about what was going on in the bigger picture. So that's a part one of Bob's story, and I'm just gonna take a short intermission and talk about some data because PMs in the room, we all love data, and so I've done 3 surveys over the last 8 months or so, and that really inspired me to put this workshop together. So the first survey, I interviewed about 19 PMs, and 50% of them said that their biggest leadership challenge as a PM was stakeholder management. So that's definitely part of the theme tonight. And then in the second survey that I did, I talked to 27 different product managers and um, a totally different group of people, but 50% of them also said that the part of their work that causes the most emotional friction was around stakeholder management. So emotional friction meaning stress and discomfort, emotional challenges, stuff like that. And when I asked them what emotional challenge came up, 54% of them said frustration. So that really got my antennas tingling around this pattern of frustration, anger, conflict, etc. And then in my most recent survey, with 38, was it, 39, I believe, 38 or 39 product managers, 38, yeah, 76% of them said that the soft skill scenario they most want to improve on is conflict resolution. So putting this all together, there's definitely a trend around conflicts, stakeholders, frustration, um, difficult emotions. And so that definitely also inspired the little infographic that I had, the image that I had at the beginning of the presentation. So just to go back to Bob's story, there is a part two. And um, part two started when I asked Bob, given that he was in this battle with the CEO, I asked Bob, who is going to win between you and the CEO? Who is going to win in this battle? And what this helped Bob to do was to just take a step back and look at the situation from a slightly different angle and to realize that he was fighting and that maybe this wasn't the best strategy for the company and for the product. So Bob was able to step back and basically stop fighting. But then he said to me, it feels now like I'm giving up. And so this is where Bob and I did something interesting that this is what I'm really gonna talk about tonight. And so Bob and I were able to go inward and to look at the pattern of conflict that was happening and but specifically within himself and how he was contributing to it. And so he noticed that he was getting into this energy of wanting to fight and to struggle and to convince. And he was able to identify that pattern and see that in himself, and then actually start to get curious about it um, and even question if that was what he really wanted to be doing. And so after going through this coaching process with him, then he actually decided that he didn't want to keep repeating that pattern and he wanted to try showing up in a different way. And so Bob, in his own words, said that he started focusing more on influence than convincing. And I thought that sounded like a really nice shift for him. So rather than trying to convince and fight with the CEO and other people on his team, he really went for more of an empathetic approach and listening and trying to understand and connect with people, and ultimately to work from a place of influence. And what then happened over the next few months was that he was actually able to start having regular meetings with the CEO and also some of the other business leaders, and to really get those insights from the business side of the organization, and then bring that into the PM and the dev space. So this was a really big shift for Bob, and also I think for the organization in the way that they were able to work together. Um, yeah. So I'm just curious if anyone would like to just share in the chat if you've experienced any kind of challenges, conflicts with stakeholders. Yeah, you could just maybe drop an anecdote into the chat. This could be, you can anonymize it. You can pretend that it's someone else or that you heard about it from a friend if you don't want to share about your own situation personally. But yeah, I'd be super curious if people have any stories that come to mind similar to Bob's. And I'll just slow down for a second and um, see if anyone shares anything.
I've had challenges with uh, stakeholders asking about why things are late and why can't we get it done sooner and those kinds of things. So it's not like a specific problem, but it's a general kind of pattern type problem
Yeah,
where as a product manager, you feel like you want to kind of deliver features
yeah,
more rather than report on them in a sense.
right,
But
right,
that's kind of the question that comes. I mean, everybody doesn't understand or doesn't have the same understanding of your job as you do, probably.
for
And so,
sure. Yeah,
because you've been reporting about the positive aspects of it, maybe if you want to call it that, sometimes you get asked about the negative aspects of it as well. And you may or may not be prepared to answer that.
yeah, awesome. Yeah, that's a great example. Okay, and Hani says one of the frustrations are stakeholders changing their position after we came to an agreement in earlier discussions. Um, yeah, okay. They're in a different crowd. They have a different perspective, which may be performative. Totally. Yep. I'll just briefly mention another situation as well that one of my uh, one of my clients was experiencing, and it basically they had a conflict with their engineering manager, and it was leading to really high tension and uncomfortable kind of passive aggressive dynamics over Slack, and high tension meetings and things like that. And so, yeah, these kind of conflicts can show up in different ways, and with all the range of stakeholders, whether it's the CEO or an engineer or the sales team or even other PMs. Awesome. All right. So I'm gonna jump ahead and go to a bit more of an analysis. And so what I want to do is I just want to break down a little bit the process that I went through with Bob and what I've found to be working really well with other product managers. And this also works for most people in general, but the context that I'm focusing on is really with PMs. So this is just an overview then of the process and how it's seemed to work really well for me and the people that I work with. So imagine there's the product manager, that could be you, and you have what I would call like a a bubble of awareness, or essentially an idea of what's going on around you, and it reaches about, so far. And then there's other stakeholders. In this case, I'll use the CEO as an example. And they also have a bubble, and the bubbles have a bit of an overlap. So there are some things that you can see together, but there's actually a lot that you don't see about the other person's reality. And in your own reality, there's certain things like goals, there's constraints, there's other variables as well. And this is also true for your stakeholders. And so while there's things that are in your own individual bubbles that you may not be aware of, like what the other person's constraints are, there's also going to be things that are in the shared space here. So these can be like, product goals or business goals or company vision and mission. That could be like your actual meetings. Those are going to be in the shared space, even something like a roadmap. And so when there's a conflict, when there's a misalignment, it's often because there's something that is in the stakeholder's bubble or in your bubble, but it's not in the shared space. And so to get back into alignment, then it's kind of just about creating a bit of connection and bringing that information into the shared space. And this isn't like a groundbreaking idea. When you don't know, you just go ask questions or you get some help or you think about it, and you basically use connection and curiosity to um, to get the information that you need so that you can create alignment and move forward together. So in this little image, we just move the bubbles closer together and we move some things that were outside of the shared space into the shared space. So that's pretty simple and straightforward. And you don't need like a webinar or a mentor or anyone to really help you figure that out. It's a pretty natural thing to do. Um, and that's like the most common kind of way to create alignment when there's misalignment. But the reason that I'm really talking about this is because there's a pattern here which is important to understand. So when there's a misalignment, we can use connection and curiosity to basically get a better understanding. And then from the better understanding, that brings information into the shared space. And that way, then we can uh, create alignment, get on the same page, and move forward together. So it's that pattern of using connection and curiosity to create alignment. And like I said, most of the time, this is pretty straightforward. We can just go ahead and do it. But sometimes there's a lot of tension, there's conflict, there's certain toxic or passive aggressive patterns that are playing out. And in this kind of situation, um, it's like this spiky wall goes up in between us and our stakeholders. And that wall is very sharp, uncomfortable, full of tension, full of just unpleasing experiences. And so that will lead to what I would call a stakeholder conflict, which is like a more extreme version of a misalignment. And so that when there's a conflict, then there's going to be a blockage, and that blocks the information from flowing, sometimes resources or um, connection. And this is often where there can be some really big, thorny bottlenecks in our product work, where it's not just a stakeholder misalignment, but it's a stakeholder conflict. And then this kind of spiky wall goes up, and we find really clever ways to get around it, but it takes a ton of energy and it's really uncomfortable, and it can also be dangerous. Like it can lead to uh, tricky scenarios like um, burnout. It can also, if it doesn't get addressed in the long run, it can create so much disconnection that maybe somebody gets fired. It could also lead to explosive reactions and things like that. So what's really interesting then to do is to consider how we can address this kind of conflict. And so the main thing about to observe when this is happening is to notice if we feel unsafe approaching the person or unsafe with the situation, we feel maybe that we're frustrated, or we feel like an imposter, we feel overwhelmed, we feel shut down, we go into a people-pleasing mode. So different patterns like this. Now, what's cool is that we can actually use the same kind of process as I was describing before, but instead of using it with the stakeholder, we use it with the spiky wall pattern. And so, what I mean by that is we can use connection and curiosity and get to explore what this thorny, spiky wall is, and how it's showing up. So this is really where we can take a step back in a conflict and we can try to get more curious. We can create a little safe bubble for ourselves, and we can bring that conflict into the bubble and try to get to understand it better from a place of curiosity. And so this is actually what I did with Bob, and I helped him understand why he was getting so reactive and going into this convincing energy, this kind of battle fighting mode with his CEO. And that's also what we're gonna go into a bit more today in the session. So the idea here is again to use the connection and curiosity to get to know this pattern and understand why it's there, and um, what it's basically why it's showing up and what it's trying to do. Um, so when we do this, and if we do it properly, then that pattern we can actually create our we can create more self-confidence and um, psychological safety with that pattern. So instead of being afraid of it, instead of trying to control it or fix it or make it go away, we can actually learn how to be with it and to move into it and through it. And what happens then is when we go back to engage with that stakeholder, we've gotten to know this pattern better. And so we move towards it. And even if it starts to get bigger and more intense, we can feel safe, we can feel grounded and clear, and we can still keep going forward with the sense of connection and curiosity. And then basically, what I've seen happen over and over again is that these patterns then they start to relax and dissolve. And the conflicting pattern that was happening between the two stakeholders is it's not that it's gone, but it's relaxed and it's loosened up, and there's the ability to connect. And this then allows us to do what we were doing before, which was to then ask questions to the stakeholder and or share information, get to know them better, um, and bring the information we need into the shared space. And this obviously leads to more successful product work and more fun experience, more wins, and more celebrations. So, um, just a final note on this, that this kind of process is not um, Oh, okay, I see. Well, I was cutting out again for a while, but back. This kind of process is re requires quite a lot of maturity to take this approach. And so I just want to acknowledge that that it's not so easy always, because we often, especially with someone that's managing us when there's a conflict, or when someone we perceive to be more of an authority than us, because we often expect that kind of person to be more mature than we are, and to hold space for us and the challenges that we're going through. But I just want to say that as a product manager and someone that, obviously talks to a lot of different people and supports a lot of people through the way that you show up, uh, doing a process like this is, not only requires a lot of maturity, but it also builds your maturity and allows you to be present with more difficult types of situations and scenarios. And so it's a really great investment also in just your own personal development and leadership skill set. So, that's the overview of the process that I took Bob through. And just to recap it, um, basically there's the steps here. So the first step is to notice that the conflict is happening, and then to step back from the situation. Um, Use curiosity and connection to gain more understanding. And so if at that point we feel unsafe, so that would mean that there's a lot of tension, or that sort of red spiky wall that feels like, unsafe in the dynamic, then it's a good idea to step back further, create a space for yourself, maybe even get help, and try to use curiosity and connection to better understand your own situation, your own trigger, what it is that is happening inside of you, with your emotions, with your thoughts, just like Bob, how Bob was, going into this sort of combative mode, trying to convince, and getting curious about that and trying to understand it better. And then, if you're able to achieve that, then you're going to have more understanding and curiosity for yourself and for the situation, and you're going to be able to, show up with the stakeholder and with the conflict pattern that is happening, and, to be more present with it, and to continue to use curiosity and connection to better understand them, and then at the end there, step four, to explore the situation together and adapt the, relationship that you have and how you're working together. So, I'm just going to give one, other example, one other story of, going through this process. And this was, the person that I mentioned earlier, not Bob, but, the other person. And they were having a conflict with their engineering manager. And so, um, when I was working with them, we took a step back from the situation they were experiencing, and they were noticing that they weren't really interested in learning more about the engineering manager yet. They were still feeling very unsafe and attacked, actually. And so, we went to kind of, here in this four-step process, we went to 3B, and we created a safe space for them. And they were able to explore, with more curiosity, what was happening internally. And they were noticing how, defensive they were getting, and, also hypervigilant. And so this kind of hypervigilance was, showing up in the way that they were engaging, in response with the stakeholder, with the engineering manager. And that was causing, the situation to escalate, actually. And so once I helped this product manager understand that and kind of feel more present with their own situation, they actually went back and they talked to their engineering manager. And instead of normally what happens in those conversations where there'd be a lot of tension and they would kind of have some passive aggressive dynamics together, this time the product manager was able to show up with more more self-awareness and vulnerability and actually use connection um, as a way to basically better understand the engineering manager and how the product manager's own behaviors were uh, impacting the engineering manager. And so the EM was sharing a bit about how um, the PM's behavior was yeah feeling very kind of hyper vigilant and like um, all over the place in like a aggressive way, and that was causing the EM to also get triggered. And so it was just very fascinating how they were basically both caught in the dynamic, and it took one of them to sort of step back and really look at their own experience from this place of curiosity and take that sort of mature effort to to be more aware and present of what was really going on in the dynamic instead of staying in the reactive pattern. And so ultimately that allowed them to connect and to have a better understanding of how to work together. So that's just one other example of this process and how it could play out. So really, that's what I wanted to share in terms of process. And I, the rest of the time for the session, my plan was to do some more live processes and coaching. So um, that's really what I have on the agenda. And I'm just curious if, oh yeah, did I see a hand go up there? Awesome. You want to share something?
Yeah, if you can go back to that slide that you had up on the four step process, Sam. I
Yeah. Give me a second here.
and I think you were like pointing to this, but I just uh, would appreciate like a little bit of clarification that I understood it. We are looking at a different screen. It's almost like maybe this is Canva. Yeah.
Yeah, I just have, yeah. When
Yeah.
I have it in presentation mode, I can't screen share it.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
interesting. Yeah. So I have to
Yeah.
go to presentation mode. So this is
So
that process. Yeah.
yeah, so if I understand correctly, like step three is turning inwards. Is that like it's like creating
So
space and turning inwards?
step three is using curiosity and connection, and this could be an outward move.
Hmm.
But if if unsafe, as in 3A, if unsafe, then it's more of an inward move. So we want to step further back from the situation
Hmm.
and then create a safe space for ourselves and maybe get support. And then we go inward. We use curiosity and connection to understand what's happening internally.
Oh, okay. So like how is it an outward move? Like I feel like
The
I can
outward move is um, connecting with the other person with curiosity, yeah, and trying to understand them better.
okay. Okay.
So that's
I
sort of if if there wasn't if this wasn't a high tension situation, then you would just go step one, step two, step three, step four, just straight up. Like you would notice that
Mm,
there's a conflict, you would step back from the situation, you would just get curious and connect with the person, and then you would explore that situation with them and adapt the relationship as needed.
oh, okay.
But when
I guess.
there's a high tension and that kind of spiky wall that comes up, then it's 3A, there's the lack of safety. So it's step further back,
Mm,
create a safe space, use curiosity and connection to understand your own pattern, your own trigger. And then from there, it's the step forward.
I see.
Yeah,
I see. Uh, so
I could have probably put it as two. Here, I'll just change it literally because I think what you're sharing is really great kind of question. So it could be here.
oh, right, right. Before you get there. Yeah, that's good.
And let's see.
Um, and I'm curious.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, there you go. That makes sense. Uh, yeah. And then in what's now step 2B, it says get help.
yeah,
Create a safe space for yourself and get help. What are some, like sometimes as a product manager, it's just really isolating, right? Like
yeah,
who am I going to go for? Who am I going to go to get help?
yeah,
Or what does that look like?
yeah. Yeah, right. Great question. And it can depend a lot on the scale of the situation. And so sometimes we can just feel more safe by talking to a friend or talking to like another PM who might have experienced a similar situation. Um,
Mm,
I mean, it could be talking to your manager. Like that's a
mm,
that's not necessarily always an option for a lot of people. But
yeah.
if it is, that's, an internal support is like a great place to go. But
Mm,
if it's not an option or if it's a higher tension situation and you feel really unsafe, then that could be a time to go outside of your org and maybe there's a peer support group, there's a product mentor, maybe even a therapist or a coach that could help you create that kind of safe space. So,
mm,
so then again, you can get to step C, which is to use curiosity and connection to
mm,
understand your own part of the situation.
mm. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, like this, I appreciate like just the way this got laid out. Like I can track this better and yeah, that's some good thinking on uh
Awesome.
support. Appreciate it.
Great. But yeah, feel free to drop any other questions. You can share an audio or even in the chat.
I wanted to ask a question about kind of working remote and some of the challenges that come with that.
Yeah.
Uh, I feel like just developing a relationship is much more challenging, especially if you start remote and don't have experience working with the company or with your colleagues. Do you have any tips on how we can adapt this process for that?
Yeah, the challenge that I keep hearing over and over from people working remote is there's not that kind of casual relationship building. And as humans, we really thrive on that for building trust and kind of having more fun together and just like a shared understanding of who this person is and what they like and how they function. And so I think well, I just say one systemic pattern that I see is that we, when we work in a more remote culture, we lack that context for, I'll just call it play, which is sort of just non-structured connection. Although play can sometimes be very structured with games and all. Uh, but what I've found is creating moments for that type of connection is really valuable, and doing that, understanding that there's a price tag on that, or on not doing that, essentially. Um, so, I've heard of different people do things like schedule like a weekly swing by, sort of like where, it's, imagine like, oh, I'm just swinging by your desk like you would do in an office. And it's just a chance for like an unstructured time to connect and to get to know someone better. Another move is, especially when you're starting out in a company or on a project, is to just like basically interview some of the stakeholders. Just say, hey, I want to just understand a bit more about the project and like get to know you better and make a connection. So it's a lot of pre-alignment work. Um, and also, just as a third idea, I've seen a lot of different tools and service offers that are focused around play and helping remote teams just find simple, easy ways to play together, whether it's games on Slack or having outside facilitator come in and lead some kind of sessions, team building sessions, or things like that.
I think I feel like I totally get your point and I totally accept it. I feel like with people who are at your kind of level in terms of the org structure, that might be easier to do. But for people, especially with stakeholders, a lot of them are at like a higher level than you. So it's kind of, even if it was in person, it might not be like normal practice to invite somebody to like a fun conversation. Like, you are the CEO, I'm a product manager, you are busy type thing, like, unless you
Yeah,
invite me to a fun conversation, I won't interrupt your day and invite you to my fun activity. It might be too low or too, something for you. So that's kind of
totally.
a bit of a challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just curious, would you be open to sharing a bit more context in terms
Yeah.
of how that might be challenging and also useful for you and
Yeah.
the situation
So
that
yeah,
you're
I mean,
in?
I'm currently facing this challenge. I work remotely. This particular stakeholder that I'm having a challenge with, he is remote. I mean, we are both remote, but like he's away, not in my same city. He's on the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast, and he's like an engineering leader, but
Mhm.
obviously he's my stakeholder as well, right? I'm product manager. I have my manager's title is director of product management. His title is VP, or his manager's title is VP. So we have a VP, director, and myself, and this person is like the senior VP of engineering. So he's almost like two levels removed in terms of vertical and like one horizontal that way.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so it's kind of I feel like it's not appropriate for me to just say, hey, do you want to come and have a fun chat with me? It's like almost, but obviously when he's asking questions, he asks me and tags me directly because I'm the one who's kind of providing progress type or positive responses that I was saying earlier. Like, yes, these are the things that we achieved and these are the things that we've delivered. So those are the types of updates that come from me. And so whenever there's like delays and maybe, some estimates that are larger than that at least he perceives, I've hopefully agreed with those estimates with my engineering team. And that's how I've made the roadmap. But when I present the roadmap, I get challenged sometimes on, why can't we do this quicker? And like it's almost like
Uh-huh.
my response is, why don't you ask people who report to you, like, why are you asking me, is almost my response. Obviously I can't say that, but that's kind of the scenario that I've been put in, and this has been going for about a year now. I'm dealing with it, and I've shared with
Yeah.
my manager. I have a good relationship with my manager. I've shared with her how I feel, and she's been kind of, she said, okay, I'll take it up with him one on one, but it still continues to happen. And I'm
Yeah.
kind of okay with it in the sense, I'm okay with it in the sense
Yeah.
of I have now accepted that as part of the relationship almost, but I want to improve
Right.
that relationship and
Yeah.
kind of be able to say, hey, can we invite person XYZ to this conversation, and they can provide a response on why they think it's going to take 3 months when you feel like it will be taking 1 month. It should be taking 1 month, I mean, right? Because
Right.
when I get an estimate of 3 months, that's how the roadmap is going to be presented. I can't say, we'll get it done in 1 month when the entire team agrees that it's going to be taking 3 months, for example.
Okay. Yeah. So there's kind of a consistent pattern that keeps happening there.
Yes.
And there's some way that you want to show up and do things differently in that dynamic, but
Yeah.
there's something holding you back from doing that.
Yeah, I mean, one is just, feeling I'm overreaching in the sense, I should not be. And obviously, publicly, I never want to call him out on, you know, what I feel is not, I don't know what the
Yeah.
right best word is, but like, not acting in the best interest in a sense.
Yeah.
It's not my responsibility to explain to you every single decision that has been taken by the team. That the way we work, at least in the organization, right? It's
Yeah.
like, not every product manager is challenged on every single decision that they convey, especially in a larger group as well. Like, when I'm doing a roadmap presentation, it's not like a one-on-one meeting. It's like a meeting with like 25 different people. And I'm just saying, hey, here's the things that we're going to achieve in the next 3 months, or here are some of the critical things that we are here to talk about. So it's like a particular kind of, roadmap item that we're talking about. And then
Yeah.
I just present, hey, here's the progress on it, or here's when we think it will be delivered, and therefore, whatever the other conversation is. And during that conversation, I'm challenged on why can't we get this done sooner and things like that. He probably has his own pressures and things like that. He's whatever he might.
So that's exactly what I'm noticing is probably.
Yeah.
So you said he probably has. And so that's where I would go and eventually at least is can you ask him what's actually going on?
Okay.
And I'm just curious as I can just propose that idea, but uh is there a way to ask him like, oh, that's interesting that you're saying could it take 1 month instead of 3 months? I'm just curious to know maybe more about the constraints or the goals that you have and why that would be important.
Yeah.
Like I want to understand why you're seeing it that way because maybe I'm missing something.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, makes sense. I can approach it that way.
Yeah. So that's so what I just did is I used the framework that I was describing, which is I used curiosity and connection when there's that misalignment or that like subtle conflict. And then I just kind of leaned in and I sort of found a way to really be curious and connect with them to try to understand their situation. So that instead of, probably they have a lot of pressure, it's, what's actually going on. And I'll just say sometimes people will say, "Oh, well, I just want to challenge you to see if we can do it faster." Like it has like nothing to do with their constraints. Or other times I've seen like I was talking to one PM and they had a similar situation and they just said basically, "Oh, that's so interesting that like you disagree and I'm curious like what are you noticing or what data do you have?" And that person just literally like started to like just stopped like pushing back completely because they didn't have a really a stance that had a strong foundation behind it. So it's just interesting how that kind of curiosity and connection can um, almost disarm the other person. It can almost disarm the situation. But you
Yeah.
have to be careful too, because if you do it from a place of trying to be tricky, then it sometimes backfires. But it wants to come from a really genuine place of really curiosity and trying to understand what's going on for them.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. And so I'm just curious because when I share that, does that sound just really simple? Okay, I'm going to go do that right now. Or is there
Uh,
could
for
that be
me,
a challenging situation for
I
you?
think it's that authority or the title thing is coming in the way of just having like a completely open and frank discussion. I don't feel like I have I guess I can just set up a one-on-one meeting with him on the calendar and talk to him, but I feel like, my manager already has a one-on-one with him in a sense. So
Mhm.
that's where my direction should come from. In a sense, like, I don't want to be coming off as like, going above my manager. I don't care about
Totally.
the relationship with this person. More, I actually care about my organization or my org chart, right? I have a
Yeah.
director and a VP above me who he's like parallel, directly aligned with. Why would I go around them and like try and set up a one-on-one?
Right.
But like when I
Yeah.
even as I'm talking through it, is like I'm trying to improve my relationship with this person. I don't think it should matter to my manager
Yeah.
how or why I do that, right? It's
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, you have to assess the way that
yes,
your org works, because in some
yeah,
orgs that's a big no-no, and
yeah.
others no one cares, or they're excited for you. So
Or they might just be happy that I'm not complaining about it anymore to them.
yeah.
You know?
Yes, like now you're empowered.
Yeah.
And you can always ask too. You can always ask your manager,
Yes.
hey, I've just been noticing this pattern with that other person. We've even talked about it. I just think it would be great if I could just connect with them and try to understand the situation a bit better and why that keeps happening.
Yeah.
Would you be okay if I do that? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Makes sense.
fantastic. Awesome. So I mean, I just, I just asked a bunch of questions to understand your situation, and then I used the approach that I had talked about in the first 30 minutes, and curiosity and connection from that genuine heart-centered place, and seems like it opened up a possibility for you.
Yeah. Cool.
That's awesome.
What I'm noticing is um, there's certain situations, like in conversations with people, where I notice like my walls like coming up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sense like a sense of defensiveness, um, and uh, that's difficult. I find it like difficult to work through that. Like I find myself withdrawing from like the conversation or staying quiet or just like
Yep.
nodding along so that I avoid a confrontation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I feel like at the root of it, there's like an insecurity, like maybe within myself that
Yep.
may be the cause of it. But I'm curious, like what comes to mind for you? Because like these are real-time conversations, decisions are being made, things are moving,
Yes.
and like if that opportunity like passes and like nothing is said, it's like you have to rearrange like a lot. And now it becomes like 5 times as hard to like
Yeah.
address the issue because you didn't address it like in the moment.
Yeah. Like maybe you overcommitted, or you just said yes and like you didn't really want to, or you
Yeah,
should
or you
have
weren't
asked, like
aligned,
you should have.
whatever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there are two outcomes. It's like either now you just suck it up and like do it,
Yeah.
or yeah,
Yeah. It's a much harder hill to climb, especially if you want to uh kind of change course. But
yeah.
no, so what comes to mind? So I'm gonna pull up the slides again, and bear with me while I do this awkward process of getting the presentation back up. Um, so this is a really subtle, like I hear so many PMs talk about imposter syndrome, and uh on the one side of people getting angry and exploding and being overly assertive and having this superiority complex, there's an equal number of people that are shutting down and going into people pleasing mode, or kind of a defensive, I'm just going to go along with the situation in order to feel safe in the moment. But that's where we would go, I would go to this step 2A. So you want to look at that situation that you're talking about and realize, okay, there's a consistent pattern where I basically shut down in certain with certain types of people or when certain energies come up, certain emotions or certain energies in those conversations. And I don't feel safe. Like what I'm hearing is I don't feel safe. So I need to shut down and I need to go along with, whatever they want to say or just kind of bear through the situation. So now the thing is that sometimes that happens and it's not that big of a deal, even though it happens a lot, but it's just doesn't it's not that big of a deal. And most of the time, we're just not going to be motivated to do something about it. But when it starts to become like a big deal or it happens over and over and over again, like, and it causes a lot of clear problems, then it's like, okay, I should probably do something about this. So it's interesting as I'm saying this, I'm curious, like for the situation you're describing, what do you feel is your motivation level to like try to understand that pattern and maybe do something different with it? Is it sort of like nice to have or necessary or
I feel like it's kind of like a death by a thousand paper cuts sort of situation.
yeah,
Uh, and if
yeah,
like in what happens like after a while is like things like this fester and it like turns into like some sort of narrative like inside of my head that creates even more distance between me and that person
yes,
or that situation. And I can like notice my thinking mind like start spinning while I'm not there, just sort of like amplifying like the message.
yeah,
And who knows what sort of stories it tells, but um
yeah,
yeah, but like the root of it is really not like I believe is like not addressing it like in the moment. And looking at this in step two, it's like take a step back, create a safe space for myself. Like if I do that, I end up in the situation where now it's just like even harder, like to go back and address it because now it's just going to cost like significantly more, right? So if it was like this big of a thing, like in the conversation,
uh-huh,
the fact that like nothing was said and
yeah,
having to go back and readdress it, now it's like this big,
right,
right?
okay,
And you're like, oh, there's too much momentum, so I give up. But then like it festers, right? Like,
yeah,
and that,
okay. So in that situation, then you want to think about not how do I deal with that time that it happened, but the next time that it will happen.
mm,
How do I prepare myself for the next time that it will happen? Because you already said it, 1,000 paper cuts. So
yeah,
something that happens over and over and over again. And
yeah,
like 100 times is not that bad, but 1,000 times it
mm,
kill
mm,
you. And it's going to be 1,001 and 1,002 and
yeah.
1,003. So how do you build that internal capacity to be more present with the next time that the situation happens? So like that's just like a sort of a technical like orientation that I would take for that type of situation.
Yeah, I'll keep that. I'll keep that in mind. I think the big thing about that is for excuse me for that like not to turn into it's like two extremes. Either you're like quiet or you're like frustrated from all the other times it happens, and then it turns into like the wrong, into that sharp edges that
Yeah.
you drew in the illustration. So
Yeah.
like some ideas come to mind. Like one is uh, actually addressing it like at a meta level,
Uh-huh.
like outside of that conversation, like with the right people, and saying
Uh-huh.
like, hey, like this has come up like in the past, like these are some of the things that I observed, but that allows me like that relationship so that in the future like I feel like a little bit more confident. But yeah, that's sort
Yeah.
of like going through my head right now. So
Totally. Yeah, and so what really funny metaphor comes up, like my own story, which is more about like eating ice cream. Uh but it's like, oh, I really want some ice cream. And then it's like, no, 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 don't do that. But then it's like, oh no, it's too late. Like I just got to eat the ice cream now. I already thought about it. And then so I just like give into the situation and I go and I eat the ice cream. And then after, part of me feels great and part of me feels gross. But I started noticing that pattern, and this wasn't just with ice cream, but it was kind of with like sweet food in general. And this is real, by the way. Uh, but then I set a goal for myself, which wasn't to just eradicate the whole pattern, but just notice when it's happening, first of all. Just like notice that it's happening. And then it's like, I want to get ice cream. No, no, don't get ice cream. Oh, the ice cream pattern, it's happening again. So that was like just the very, very first stage. And this is step one in the first step process here. And then the second goal that I set for myself was, um, and it wasn't even really a goal, but it happened by accident where one time I got the ice cream out and I literally had like the spoon and I was like, wait a second, like I could just stop right now. Like it seems like I already fully committed to this whole thing playing out, but actually I could just stop. Like I could literally just not put the spoon into the ice cream. So like I don't know exactly your situation, but let's say like that person wanted to have a meeting with you and you didn't want to do it, but then you just said yes. But then you actually like have to schedule the meeting. And it's just like, well, what if I just don't send them a meeting invite? It's sort of like the spoon's almost in, and then no, I'll just not do that. And so it's just that's like a very kind of slow like way that process played out for me. And sometimes that's how I've seen these patterns unfold and kind of unkink themselves. Um, but what I find too is that the more support that I get to in order to understand the pattern and really feel in myself like what's going on, then the more quickly that it resolves itself. So it's kind of often about how much help am I willing to ask for, or how vulnerable am I willing to be to kind of see the situation and what is really going on, especially on my side. Uh, which is more clear with the ice cream because it's not there's no one else doing that to me. But sometimes with other people situations we can feel like they're doing it to us. So that's really then important to really step back and try to understand whether we're getting shut down and why that's happening, or if we're getting frustrated, or yeah. Those are some thoughts there. Awesome. To share one final message, which is that if you're looking for more of this kind of work, I'm happy to talk about the one-on-one coaching services that I offer. So this is specifically for product managers or adjacent functions who want to better navigate conflict and build emotional resilience, and also build your leadership skills so that you can get back to doing the real product work. So if you're interested in connecting and chatting about ways that I work with my clients and how I might be able to support you, I'd love to hear more about your situation and what your goals are and what challenges you're facing. So you can book a discovery call if that interests you. And then there's the link there on the bottom. It's bit.ly/PM empathy. So thanks so much again for showing up, and I look forward to connecting in the future and continuing to just grow and create more alignment and great product work in the world.